Hello everyone, good afternoon. I am Jacob Joseph. I lead data science at Clevertap. Today I'm going to talk to you about what are the aspects of features that we are building in Clever.ai. Basically, after lunch, this is a really challenging session. Please help me out. So today we are basically, among other things, we'll be focusing on Gen AI. So before we start, what is Clevertap, right? So we are a marketing automation platform that helps customers, brands, retain their users. Now, why is that important? Today, it's 5 times more expensive to acquire a customer than to retain an existing one. So the ROI on spending more on your existing customers is much higher compared to acquiring. And why is retention important? Retention has a positive correlation with a customer lifetime value. And the Clevertap platform enables brands to unlock this and to increase the customer lifetime value. And how did we go about it? So we were born about 10 years back. And the first 2 years, we focused our efforts on building our own database. We have a proprietary database which is fine-tuned towards enabling marketing use cases. It's specifically for the marketing domain. So any brands can analyze their user base, segment their user base, and engage with them in real time. So to give you an example, Shami is about to take, it's on a hat trick, possibly. And there are maybe 20% of your users who are not on the platform, on Hotstar or maybe Jio Cinema. Now, how do you bring them back? Now, this is a very time-bound thing, right? It has to happen in real time. So our platform enables such kind of use cases wherein you are able to engage with your users in real time, within seconds, and whatever the scale may be 5,000 users, 50 million users, 100 million users, 300 million users. We don't have an issue. So for example, our platform today enables up to 8 billion data points per user. You can leverage that in real time. Now, how that 8 billion data points came about? So we have something called as events and user properties. So what are events? It's like an action performed by a user. And user profile data is the user properties. So for example, if you have done an app launched, it's an event. If you have viewed a particular product, that's a product viewed event. And then, likewise, you can store up to 2,000 events across possibly 10 years data. And then there are attributes of the event. So for example, if you're viewing a product, what's the product name? What's the product ID? Right? So various other attributes. And obviously, user properties. Where is the user from? What OS, region, various other custom user properties, like whether the user is on maybe a gold plan, platinum, or whatever. So likewise, up to 8 billion data points you can store and access, not only about storage, but process in real time. That has enabled us to, and by the way, this TesseraCtDB we have patents for this database. Now, this database has enabled us to run our AI models in real time, ranging from segmentation of the users, the recommendation system that we have, the optimization techniques, and various other use cases. Now, why do we need a machine learning system to be powered in our database, right? Because you are storing that much of data, but are you kind of utilizing it? That's the million-dollar question. We have a lot of, it happens with us also, right? If you just open your closet, you might be using just 10, 20% of your clothes, right? You're buying something, you're putting in your closet and forgetting it. So likewise, here, marketers may tend to store a lot of information, but are they using it? It's not that they don't want to use it, but it's manually impossible to visualize dimensions in visualize data in multiple dimensions. So that's where the machine learning comes into play. So today, basically, I'll look at Okay, these are the list of partners that we have across the customers that we have across the globe. We have marquee names in India such as Jio, Paytm, Swiggy, Zomato, and various other big brands. And we have across the globe also like Burger King, Namshi, AirAsia, and the likes. Great, so let me talk to you about Gen AI in production. So we were the first companies in India which introduced a feature in Gen AI back in April this year. So there are a couple of products. First is Scribe, next is Ask. So Scribe, what it does is, it generates campaign content on the fly. Not just a normal campaign, but campaign which emotionally resonates with your users. I'll go in detail why this is important. And then there is a retrieval augmented generated technical feature called Ask, wherein it reads from the Clevertap's documentation and blogs. So let's look at Scribe. Why do you need Scribe? See, you would tend to agree that how you talk, how you relay information to your partner or whomever you talk to becomes very important. How you say things, right? Research has shown that it takes less than 2 seconds for a customer to click on a notification or an email message, a promotional message. So it takes very short amount of time. Now in that time, usually you can't take rational decisions. It's generally emotional. So for example, if I tell you, okay, 50% off on shoes, offer ends tonight. The same thing, maybe you tell to someone, hooray, you have won 50% coupon, or hooray, you have won a coupon. Click to view. So the same campaign you can say in multiple styles, but what style resonates with your audience? So that's a $1 million question. So what Scribe does is it appeals to the emotional side. And how do we do that? See, there is some emotion model that we look at. So in about maybe 4 or 5 decades back, Dr. Robert Plutchik came up with a emotion model. It's called a wheel of emotions. What it does is, it basically separates human emotions into 8 emotions, which is anticipation, joy, trust, fear, surprise, sadness, disgust, and anger. These are the 8 basic emotions that human beings say. And if that emotion becomes strong, for example, if you go down here, fear becomes terror. And if you go up, fear becomes apprehension. And then there may be interplay between anticipation and anger, which comes as aggressiveness. So there are 24 derivative emotions in addition to the 8 basic emotions. Now, no marketer is going to send you a campaign which has anger, disgust, or sadness, right? You won't get a promotional message saying, which evokes those sort of emotions. So we looked at, okay, let's look at these 5 emotions because we are dealing with a marketing domain. So anticipation, joy, trust, fear, surprise. Again, fear in case of marketing becomes FOMO. Okay, so then, this is the emotion model that we look at. Then what is the next operational challenges? It is very difficult to create content on the fly. There is a separate content team which does that. And if the marketer wants to send 10 messages on daily basis, it is not easy. There is a long list of wait time that you need to wait as a marketer. You can't say that, okay, I want now give it within the 10 minutes. No, it doesn't happen. So these things take time. So our challenge was, how can we reduce this content creation from hours and days to just seconds or minutes? So that was the challenge, the operational part. Here, the emotional side, it could lead to increase in the click-through rate. What is the click-through rate? If I send 100 messages, if 2 users click on that message, the CTR is 2%. So here, increase the CTR, and the other one is the operational challenge. Again, if you are getting, probably, you must have got certain messages which are repeated messages, right? Maybe on a weekly basis from a specific brand. It happens. So what we have seen in our analysis is, if you are sending repeated message to this user, there is an 80% drop in CTR. So that's how big a challenge this is. So let's look at what did we do to overcome some of these. So in order to optimize, now we had the emotion model, right, with us. Now we need to say that, okay, given this text, the campaign text, what percentage of emotion is FOMO, anticipation, joy, trust, right? What is it? It should total up to some 100%, but what is this percentage? So we looked at various models, and BERT, which is a 2018 model, worked best for this use case. And obviously for this, we had to look at a GPU instance, and we were able to get this 50 requests per second, right, in the response for one GPU. And that GPU is the lowest cost GPU in AWS, roughly boils down to $400, $300 to $400 on a monthly basis. So this is on the BERT stuff that we cracked. Because I'll show you why we had to go for BERT rather than like a GPT or something. Then, obviously, like I said, we had the goal for the operational part, operational challenges. So we use GPT to create variants of a specific campaign content. So there are two cases. One, you come and create a new content itself. So for example, Swiggy may want to, okay, give me a campaign for a breakfast campaign with 50% off for a specific location or stuff like that. So that's a new content itself. Another could be, I want variants of a specific content. I already have a campaign text. So for example, 50% off on shoes, offer ends tonight, but I want variants for that. So those two cases, ChatGPT kind of solved it beautifully. And the emotions part anyway we have. From ChatGPT, we'll get what is the percentage emotions for each of these campaign texts. And based on that, the marketer can take a call, what emotions they want to drive for their user base. Cool. Now, this is a short demo I would like to give you why we went for BERT rather than a GPT. So this is from a Jupyter notebook. So here I'm looking at GPT-4. Okay, and I'm saying, okay, you are an expert in extracting percentage of emotions, and I'm giving you, okay, surprise, joy, anticipation, trust, and FOMO. You have to limit it to that. And what it gave me? 50% off on shoes, offer ends tonight, 20% FOMO. I mean, even if someone, I mean, every one of you will agree, right? FOMO has to be the highest over there. Now, in, just a second. So what happened over here is, you got FOMO 20% in the first case, wherein I put FOMO at the last. Okay, and then what happened? It gave surprise 20% and FOMO also 20%. In the next thing, what I did is, I reversed the role of FOMO and surprise. FOMO I gave at number 1, and surprise I gave at number 5. Earlier FOMO was 20%, now FOMO is 50%. So this is the problem with GPT. So then now this is a real production stuff that I'm showing you. 50% off on you, offer ends tonight. You see FOMO is 91%. Everyone will agree that this is a FOMO-based message, but we are quantifying how much it is. And then you are also giving suggestions, other options, wherein the FOMO percentage is different. Okay, and you can also say that, oh, I want to increase joy, or maybe I want to increase trust. We'll show only the messages that have a higher trust than your base trust of 2%. Here I'm getting some 24% to 20 to 24% trust. Great, so how do we did it? Basically, we have a user who's putting the user input. Then we are finding the emotions for that. If you are looking at variants of a specific message, we look at emotions, emotion detector, which is on the GPU instance. Then we look at the chat GPT, which is for the chat completion, giving various variants of that. From that, we'll pass the responses, and we'll find emotions for each of those responses. So you saw certain variants. Some had more joy and all that. So we'll find the emotions, and then the ones which are meeting the criteria of those emotions, right? I said I want to increase trust. So I will show only those. And obviously, the final response is shown to the user, and also it's sent to our DB for improvements or error check or whatever. Cool. So this is with respect to the emotions part of things. Next is the RAG with ask. So then why ask? So 20% of the tickets that are received by Clevertap is related to basic questions. Users don't like reading documentation. Okay? Everyone wants to jump on. I mean, I'm also guilty. Any tool I get, first I'll try and see, how to play with that tool. And then maybe if I'm stuck, I might go to the documentation. And right now, in today's world, you don't even go to documentation, just ask ChatGPT, okay, what's the issue? So anyway, so here 20% is basic questions. And obviously, this results in loss of manpower and the support team that are there to support, right? So we, enterprise customers may have their own CSM, customer success manager, whom they can call and say, okay, how I can solve this. But there are many customers who cannot afford a CSM. So for them, they have to raise a ticket and write and all that stuff. So here, one of the use cases was reduce these tickets. Also, it's very useful for employees within the organization and also brands who join the company who are relatively new. So it's very useful for onboarding them, and also for pre-sales and sales reps, right? To solve because they don't work on the platform day in and day out. It's mostly involves selling, but they would miss out some of the nuances from the documentation, which this kind of helps out. Also, when you are in the front of the client and the client asks something, right, whether you are capable of doing something, if you're not sure, you can directly ask and you'll get the reply. And which is backed by the source also. It's not just the response, but the source of the response. So exactly, you can go to the page where the answer is. So that was one problem statement. Another is, Clevertap has a rich repository of over 500 blogs related to marketing. Now, how do we make our marketers smarter, right? Suppose, anyone has a, maybe a problem statement on how do I set a good marketing strategy? Or what are the best way I can generate an effective email or a push notification or an in-app, right? Or a WhatsApp. So we kind of support 13 channels of communication. And, for each of those channels have their own nuances. What can I do to do that? So the blog kind of addresses that, but today you have to go and search for that, and maybe, you're not even aware that probably there is something like this existing in Clevertap. So this is for making the marketer smarter. So I'll show you a small demo. So this is already in production. It has been released to a few regions, and shortly it will be exposed to all the regions. So here we are starting with some default questions, which is obviously random, and then you can ask something just to feed on how to ask the questions. So here we are saying, how can I improve customer lifetime value? So this answer is coming, again, we are using streaming APIs because it takes time, like 20 seconds and all to get. So streaming kind of solves that. It feels like it's real time. And this entire response is coming from a blog. Okay, and then we can say, okay, good, you have given all this. How do I implement it on Clevertap dashboard? On the dashboard, I have not even mentioned Clevertap as such. I have just mentioned dashboard. So it says that, okay, you can set up a lifecycle model. We have a feature called Lifecycle Optimizer, and it gives you detailed steps on how you can do, what you can do to achieve your use case. Great, so now this response is coming from the Clevertap documentation. So this is coming from the Clevertap documentation. Okay, now I can continue further. Okay, I explain life cycle optimizer in detail. So I had mentioned, so there the reply had some lifecycle optimizer, but I don't know as a marketer what this lifecycle optimizer is and how I can set it up. Great, so then it goes into detail. It gives you certain frameworks of lifecycle, the AIC or AAR, triple AIC. AIC is acquire the acquisition interest conversion, and AA, triple R is one other model. And it gives you the source also, the lifecycle optimizer source. So this kind of also will help marketers to discover features within Clevertap. Because you are a carpenter, right? You can't use if you're a carpenter, you can't use a hammer for everything, right? So this kind of helps into the product adoption as well. Great, so let's look at. So now, how do we came out this? So we saw the user input. First we are using, by the way, LangChain for this. So we are using LangChain agents and tools, and obviously GPT. First it will say, okay, whether this question is related to blogs or is it documentation. If it is blogs, it will go, we are using the conversational retrieval chain and Pinecone as a DB, which has those chunks of documents, and we'll get the relevant chunks, and we'll get the response from the GPT, and the final response, and DB for improvements. Here, DB for improvements is very important for us, because not all questions will be answered correctly, or may not have an answer at all. So we get that, like the apologies for when we didn't get the relevant documents from the source, and you can raise a support ticket and blah blah blah. We have some standard response. So this thing becomes very important because in our DB, so we have the option of giving an upward or downward against each response. So the percentage, so the downwards, right, we closely follow, and then we see whether that response itself could have been answered by the documentation, or the documentation itself has no response. So we need to improve the documentation. So in very few cases, maybe one or two, it didn't give the right response from the documentation. But majority of the cases, it was that the answer itself is not there in the documentation. So there are two ways to address this. First, we improve the documentation itself. Some things can't go into the documentation also. So then what we do is we add an extra chunk to the Pinecone DB and then the next time anyone asks a similar question, you'll get the right response. And the ones where even it was not able to find the right response, even though the answer was there in the documentation, again, that is taken care of. So first when we released it internally, around 7 to 8% were downvotes. And there was some downvotes, like, there was no response from the documents, again add 3-4% more. But the relevant ones, which actually was a wrong response, or that was still, it was in the region of 6% odd. So that gave us a lot of comfort, because 6% is not too large an error number, and GPT works. So that's how we are continuing that, and we know that we can bring that even down further if we are closely monitoring for the errors part. So now whoever comes, those 6-7%, whoever comes and types a similar question, there is no chance of an error. So today the actual error percentage is much lower, but I'm giving you if we are not handling the errors, what would have been the error rate? A major portion of the accuracy is obviously, you have to use the right model. Right now we are using right and a cheap model. We are using GPT 3.5 Turbo, 16K, and the normal GPT 3.5. Cost is, since we are in the B2B space, cost is not a big issue, and our cost here is less than 1 cent per query. And in case of Scribe, it is like 1/10 of that. So cost is not been an issue for us. We are focusing more on the quality aspect. We looked at some other models. there is not too much to, some shine in some aspects, some not shine in some other aspect, but chunking is a very important step. What chunk size you, kind of take, whether it is 200, 500, 1,000, you go higher, fine, but then when you combine responses, maybe you lose out the nuances. Whereas shorter will give you a lot of, the accuracy increases, but then after a point it again decreases. So that is something we experimented a lot. We had a set of 50 odd questions, which we tried at different, and those are like varied questions, from the code level questions, developer side questions, to marketer side questions, had a varied kind of question base. And we tried to see what are the responses for each of the chunk sizes that we did. And that's how we were able to crack the chunk size kind of an issue. So obviously, the model that you choose, the cost you have to say, especially when you're in the B2C space. And then again, with respect to security and all, you need to, so for example, right now, this ChatGPT at the time, that not the enterprise one, enterprise is I think different, I don't know what are the mechanics over there, but the normal API, they are hosted in US. Now, if you have security challenges with respect to some regions, then you have to take care of that. But Azure, if you go for Azure, they will host in specific regions. They have various regions, and they have the same copy of ChatGPT across these regions. So, but then there you have to work out with some minimum guarantee and all that stuff. So that depends on your use case. Great. So one good thing about ChatGPT, and especially for a B2B, is that I don't need to manage the, what we call the infra for that, right? A CPU normal medium T2 kind of instance works. But for our BERT, we had to go for a GPU itself. So for Scribe, our major cost is the GPU, whereas GPT comes literally free for us for both the use cases.